early 90s and stuff. It was expensive to even get the equipment to do that. But nowadays, people just use the internet because, well, it's a convenient way of copying things, but it's not the only way of doing that.
Well, I mean, people say it's convenient. I mean, yes, the convenience is there, but if I go back to the days of the Amiga, people were trading games and software via Jiffy Bag and the Royal Mail. And even now, if people were to revert back to that and say stick a couple of DVDs in the post to swap between their friends, I think you'd probably find that a lot larger amount of material could be shared in a lot quicker time than you could, say, transferring it over a peer-to-peer file sharing network. So they're never going to remove the problem. I think this is a whole thing.
I think they will celebrate the removal of the sites, or they'll try to put numbers on certain goals that they set, such as bringing down these sites or bringing down peer-to-peer. What they won't be measuring is how much infringement there is. So very often, even in labor government, they have these goals of health and number of beds and things like that. They can meet the goals, but what they don't measure is the success of the service. So they measure number of CCTVs or number of robberies, but they don't look at things that happen around it or things like. So it's a
It is a completely futile battle. I've said this before. Whilst I don't agree with a lot of the opinion on sharing files and certain copyrighted material, I think that's again where our views differ. You start targeting peer-to-peer networks like, say, like ACS Law did with their infringement letters that they would send to alleged copyright infringers. And all that you do is you move the problem on. People discover that you can use Usenet, and there is no sharing involved there, so there is no issue, and there's no issue of being tracked. And there's IRC as well, and there's so many different ways, and the whole thing is very futile. I think what needs to be done is that Hollywood and all the other producers of this material need to get together with the community and actually develop a way that everybody benefits from, because certainly from what I see, it's not a battle that can be won. For every one site that Hollywood brings down with legal action, you get about 5 more popping up, and so it goes on. Needs to get started.
I think lots of people will fail to see the relevance to free software, but they have to remember we're talking about software which is protected by copyrights and twisted to be the copyleft. But we also talk about the sharing of things, and one of the things that happens with free software, even in SourceForge and places like that, is certain companies try to remove these projects from the public because they do things like decryption, or they allow people to copy DVDs, but they never succeed in actually removing the issues. They basically take things underground, or they just have the project get more publicity, and then more people take the code, and they produce like 10 projects out of the same code, or the same core code which does the decoding and has the kernel for, say, the DRM. The other thing is the projects which have nothing to do with the with the entertainment industry. Things like OpenOffice, they get more publicity when the companies try to attack these projects, and they're perceived as more of a threat because the companies won't mind them unless they were a true capable substitute for a cash cow like Office. And that's one of those things that you find that companies cannot fight free software, and any company that tried to do that, and Microsoft has kind of learned the hard way, if it's trying to attack people sharing software, first of all, it alienates all the developers, lots of the developers, and maybe except very few benefits from the monopoly of Microsoft. And the other thing they do is they basically exclude themselves from a very large, extensive wealth of software that could be running on Windows. And what they try to do now is to grab all these programs and make them look like Windows programs, and saying, this is open source and you can run it on Windows. You don't have to go to those, evil, Linux and BSD. You don't have to use these. You can use Windows and have your Firefox and everything. So they try to change strategies. And that's just because people will want to share code, and lots of developers do want to share code. They want to show people what they can develop. This is why I think we have more free software than non-free software. Is this true, or do you happen to know the statistics? Or
I don't. Sorry, I was just sidetracked for a second there by some feedback that's just come in off one of the other shows. I apologise profusely. Sorry, Roy.
I was just trying to estimate the number of projects whose developers choose to share the code compared to those who try to package it and sell it away, which is really hard to do, and very few companies usually have those sub-stories from the big companies like Apple and Microsoft about how you should sell and package and become a billionaire, selling those programs that you do, proprietary programs. What you find is, if you look closely, is that even the proprietary shareware that you have, people barely make any money out of that. And very, very, very few companies actually manage to make lots of money from proprietary software. And therefore, lots of them can just do free software anyway. And it's the same thing with singers. They give you the illusion that you have to have copyright for all those, very, because lots of people make lots of money. But when you look very closely, you find out that the number of people who can even make a living out of singing or performing and things like that is maybe like 0.something% of the whole people, among the people who try to do that. Some of them work in restaurants and something and do some sports and try to find the way of keeping the hobby basically alive. And the reasoning they bring to the court when they try to defend the copyrights, and this is something Stallman has been complaining about, is they bring you one of those, Madonna or Britney Spears, and they use them as the tool to pass the changes to the copyright law. And these people defend copyright law because sure, it's been good to them. They became millionaires with these labels that very much are, very, very zealous about trying to get stronger copyrights and trying to ensure that the work belongs to them more than to the public after a while. So.
I wouldn't like to even guess at the sort of statistics between the people that make it big, either in software or in music or whatever. I certainly know that from my discussions with Wayne, or as he's known online as the Mad Hatter, that my knowledge of the whole recording industry and the way it works is probably a subject all in its own, and it's not something that I've managed to ever get my head round completely. What I would say is I've always been of the opinion that there are gaping problems with the copyright law that exists at the moment. I don't necessarily agree with some of the theories on a new copyright law. You look at Torrent Freak, for example, and a lot of the comments that are made, people are claiming that they're trying to support the artists, that they're trying to help free the artists from these evil publishers and evil companies that are holding them to ransom. When, to me, it reads that at the end of the day, people want something for nothing. And a lot of these people that claim to be working under the banner of free data and all data should be free are really just it's just a cover for wanting the latest Hollywood blockbusters for nothing on their computer.
Yeah, you have. It sort of depends. It actually leads me to the closing of the show. What we plan to do is to give some exposure to people whose music career involves going to all kinds of conferences and events and expos and things like that, trying to do a showcase for themselves as artists. And you're talking about people who are not completely obscure. They could reach audiences of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, but they never managed to truly become rich doing that. One of the things I've been listening for about a year or two is the South by Southwest 2009 showcasting artists. It's actually something I got by torrent, and it's legally sharing torrent, which shows you that people can share, in this case, 6 gigabytes of music completely legally, because the artists basically want to share their songs. They want people to hear the songs. So one thing that Tim and I agreed on is in the coming shows we will try to close perhaps every 1 and 2 shows, or instead of having the opening theme, we'll try to give some exposure to some of these artists from these specific events and try to have people exposed to their music, and they'll be able to listen to them by looking them up on the web. So I think Tim has some closing remarks, a few of them, and then I'll just introduce the song we're going to play.
No, I think